Samuelson in the first women's marathon, or the most recently with Serena Williams in our partnership on the message, there is no wrong way to be a woman. Nike are committed to providing that platform and also defining the future of female sports. So now in our second panel discussion, we are going to discuss on how to create change for the future. So now let's give a warm welcome to our guest speakers. First of all, we have Christine Ling, GM of Leadership Development, John Swire and Sons, also the chairperson of Swire Women's Network. And also we have Ingrid Xu, co-founder of Vamos Sports in Taiwan. Welcome. Also Marissa Yu, back onto the stage, co-founder of ESKYIU. And also Xiaowei Ye, one of China's key opinion leader on fashion and culture, and the founder of Yeah. And also we have Mei Chao. Mei Chao, hi, Mei, Asia's best chef in, wow, 2017, founder of Little Bao. Welcome. Hi, ladies, hi. This question is to all of you. You're all amazing change makers in your specific arenas, but did you think that you would be successful when you first started? Mei.
Wait, hold on. Got what though?
Huh? Do you think that you will be successful when you first started?
I don't know. I had a hard time because I think when I was younger, I was a rebel without a cause. So I was just very rebellious, and I questioned from school to anything I did. And as a child, I was quite difficult because of that. When about 5 years ago, I found my calling and cause, and that was probably cooking and hospitality. And so suddenly I had a purpose. But again, I was still very difficult. So by the time I realized that I couldn't work for anybody, I decided to open my restaurant. And that was the moment where I suddenly had a platform where I could be myself. Because I realized that in the restaurant industry, you had to perform in a certain way, and I didn't understand why it had to be that way. And then so I think the time that I really started to bloom was about 7 years ago. So before 7 years ago, really nothing really special, and then that moment came, and it's now become now.
And it is blooming, yeah. Congrats. How about Xiaomei? Yeah.
Well, I kind of just started last year. I don't know if I'm going to be successful or not. I hope so. But I think it's already, for me, it's already kind of one of my biggest accomplishments, like deciding to start a new career at a very, very, very old age.
Oh, we're never too old.
And, yeah. So, well, I think because I've been working in the fashion media or industry for like almost 20 years, and was kind of pretty successful in that sections. But I think like as long as like when you work in the area for a long time, you feel like you cannot keep doing just reporting on what is the latest fashion trend, what to wear, and then what does this mean, and then which designer is doing what. And also because the industry is changing, and you gradually seeing more like behind the scene. You gradually more care about like who make this and what's behind the story, and then everything we produce and we consume and we use and we design, what's the impact to peoples, to the environments, and to each other and to ourselves. So I think that's why I start getting more into sustainability. And actually a lightning moment was, maybe that's a little bit connection with Nike, because I started going to Copenhagen Fashion Summit, and then I heard Hannah Jones' speech there talking about sustainability. But of course, everyone was talking about sustainability at that forum. That's why I went there. But her point is quite unique. It's like innovation is the driving force. So I'm like, oh, okay. So caring about sustainability is not just because my guilt or like a moral responsibility, like we need to care about this, but actually it has this very energetic, very fun, very forward-thinking part, which is innovative. Through innovation of a material, technology, service model, way of thinking, we can push this whole agenda forward. So I think because what happened, and that kind of make a linkage to what I did before, which is kind of, even though it's journalism, but it's more on the creative side. So I can apply this and creative approach to the topic of sustainability. So I think it's much better than telling the trends of the season. So that's kind of, I just started last year. I hope I can be successful.
And how about Marissa? I knew
I just have to say something. I'm actually really excited to sit here on these unbelievable Nike grind chairs. It's highly ergonomic. It makes you sit with perfect confidence and posture.
Yes.
And it's created from modules. So this is something about life. We've been very much constructed in a life that is quite modular and restrictive per se, in parameters. But what I found is the experience in the last decade is the opportunity to break out of modules and break out of parameters and break out of constraints. And that's why there's something we have to explore as a journey to really go beyond. And that's something I've always had with both my partner, Eric, and our team at ESKYIU Design Office. And actually through this process and journey is to really question and build curiosity. And I think that's something not so much even as an architect or a designer or a curator. It's really about shaping communities and shaping culture, and that's something we're very invested in. And it's so amazing to be able to be part of this particular context and culture we're living in Hong Kong and China right now. And there's something very special about that question of how we can participate in dialogue constantly to make change. And that's something I've learned from a very young age, being empowered to ask questions and not be afraid to ask questions. And that's something I've continued with so far. And I hope to ask more questions after being inspired by the earlier panel. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Ingrid?
And speaking of successful, actually, I was a really shy girl in my teenage, and I couldn't even talk to a boy or stand in front of people. And 4 years ago, we started Bamo Sports, which is a sports channel. It's based on a group of people who believes in the same morals. The principle is to make those athletes to be seen by telling their stories, not just the famous one. I treasure this value. So it is fair to say our biggest achievement is that we still hold on this core value. And it is never to be easy to run a sports channel. We know that, but we believe we are on the right direction, on the right path, with the right people, doing the right thing.
Let them be heard, right? And be seen, yeah. Christine? Yeah.
I guess for me, when I started my career, I definitely didn't know what it was that I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. So it was really about experimenting and trying, working in different companies and in different roles. And I landed on a company within the ESKYIU group, and the values of the organization and the culture was just a great fit for me. And in terms of the role, I was in HR and organizational development, which might sound a little bit dry for some of you, but personally, I really believe that in any organization, you know, the people are really at the heart of the business. So to be in a role and in a function and working with a team that's able to impact and be guardians of the culture of the organization, the health of the organization, and to really be able to support individuals to really reach their full potential and have fulfilling careers is something that I personally get very motivated with.
Great. Now this question is to Marissa. Okay, you started tennis at a young age of 8. Wow. And had been actively playing until you were 16, yeah? And was in the Hong Kong national junior tennis team. So do you think your sports background act as a view to your business success?
Absolutely.
Do you still play? I think you still play actually, right?
I play with the children a little bit, but I don't want to reveal my age, because when you said age 8, that's quite a long time ago. And yeah, definitely, you know, when you're young, you don't really understand the exposure, but I had a really supportive mother, family. Everyone was engaging in tennis, swimming, running. We had the honor to be able to meet very different communities back then. I had this really incredible experience, definitely at a very, very young age, being on the national junior team, training 4 or 5 days a week and all my weekends. And one thing that really taught me and very special is the opportunity that we got to travel. And growing up in Kowloon, near Kowloon Tong in Kowloon City, there are obviously a lot of really amazing public spaces back then, and also the opportunity to be meeting athletes from around the world. I still remember as a very young girl at age 14 flying off to Nagoya, Kobe, and Tokyo, and having to stay in families' homes, and understood that people sleep and lie down on tatami mats, having collective bathing, sharing, and also eating very different types of food and healthy fish and rice. And so that actually taught me a lot. Subconsciously, the role of culture, community, and sport really now to this day inspires how I see the world in a very different way. And then extending that learning experience to former students, team members, and obviously the community in Hong Kong. So definitely it's trained me a lot. But I did burn out, I have to say, at age 15, 16. I took a break from tennis and to focus on academia and research. And very luckily, when I moved out to the US for the first time to New York, I was lucky enough to walk onto the varsity tennis. And that also brought me to introduce me to a completely different city and education, landscape, and sport with the discipline of architecture. As you can tell, it's really a lot about working constantly and focusing, and then balancing that with sport. Taught me a lot about multidisciplinary approaches to our design practice and balancing and multitasking, which is unbelievable, and having that opportunity. So I'm very grateful to my experience in sports and tennis especially.
So sports has brought you a lot and inspired you a lot also, yeah? And now to Ingrid. Ingrid, yeah? So from sports, from being a sports anchor to setting up your own sports channel, Vamos Sports, it can be said that sports made you who you are today, right? And what does sport mean to you, both in your career and also personally?
Okay, excuse me, my English notes. Personally, I really enjoy exploring this world by sports. And it's always fun to experience different culture through sports. For example, I really enjoy that during the Super Bowl, like all the Americans have barbecue in their backyard. And one of the most fascinating spectator sports in Hong Kong must be soccer or horse racing. And in Taiwan, we love baseball. And Japan pays highly respect to marathon runner, things like that. And sports also teach me and make me know that still disadvantaged children in the world, they try to turn around their future by sports. And most of all, while I get myself, I get myself into sports, it becomes a really positive energy to me to work, to face all the challenge in my life. So that can go a long way in boosting morale and notching up the inspiration levels and give me a lot of hopes. That's personally. And on career, actually I started as a sports reporter, anchor, because of sports. And it also leads me to my lifetime partners. They're here. And we set up Vamos Sports and opened a whole new chapter of my life. The main purpose we setting out Vamos Sports wasn't to prove female presence in this male-dominant industry. Like my partner said, she's just back there. She said, we're like the mosh pit zone of a concert. We mainly want to be at the front line to cheer on the athletes and effectively report the true story. So, yes, sports made me what I am today. Thank you.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. And can you also share with us some of your personal experiences as to how sports can help young people achieve their dreams?
Yeah, that's really important. I'm seeing this matter in two perspectives. First of all, enjoy spectator sports while we can always find inspiring stories. And from participants while they are battling through their ups and downs. And secondly, when you get yourself into any kind of sport, you will get a better idea about who you are. That's true. Meanwhile, you will be willing to talk to yourself. That's what I'm doing while I'm running or cycling, which is the first step to strength physically and mentally. And by getting yourself involved in sports, like knowing why we are compete in the games by working hard, executing and pushing yourself to the limit, and knowing the process sometimes means a lot more than result. So then we will find out ourselves, start seeing things differently. So that helps me to persevere, to achieve my dream.
That's right. The process means more than the result. Yeah, just to enjoy the process, right? And now to Xiaowei. You have been actively promoting the importance of sustainability, and we definitely want to provide a better future for our next generation, and also for athletes and also for the world, for the future. Do you think by doing sports, we're able to help make this world more sustainable?
Well, I guess certainly yes, but then have to say I'm not really the best person to talk about sports, and although I benefit from it, and I think there's a very obvious link, like Vanessa was saying before, like when you're doing sports, most of the time you choose naturally outdoors, so you're really linked with nature, so you're naturally caring about what's going on in our environment, and you're also very linked with yourself. So I think in terms of the whole idea about sustainability, or you can say like Chinese philosophy, whatever, it's 天人合一, or your small universe and the big universe, it should be all linked together. And I think sport is a very good medium of that. But I like to tell a little bit a kind of different angle, a different story. I want to tell about this Nike shoes I'm wearing. This is definitely not the product advertisement, because it's definitely not my favorite, because my favorite usually, or still my all-time favorite, is the one with Sakai and recently the Undercover or Off-White. This is a very common and even a bit ugly shoes.
No,
but
it's
why
not.
it's not ugly. But why am I wearing it? Because it's an interesting story, because about a month and a half ago, during the Paris Fashion Week, I become a literary fashion victim. I fall from my high heel platform shoes on the sidewalk. So, and I couldn't even stand up. And I thought, oh shit, I'm going to break my ankles. And I still have Fashion Week to go. I have freeze to go. What am I going to do? But luckily, I went to a doctor the next day. He said, I just kind of twisted. Nothing was broken. I said, maybe because I've been training, so there's a muscle to protect it. I'm like, oh, thank God. And then, of course, I need a brace, and I still need to walking around in Paris Fashion Week. So I need to buy the biggest possible comfortable shoes can support my ankle and my brace. So this is what I found. And ever since then, I've been wearing this because it gives me the support. And then it's kind of, so sports is not only like what we say, like energizing, like moving forward, it can also repair and heal you. And that's what sometimes what we do in sustainability. What we're doing is that we're repairing the natures, because it has been so badly damaged. So we are doing something to give it a resilience. Well, this is kind of most commonly used word in sustainability. But it's also we are repairing what the kind of damage we've been doing. And I think sports can also have this kind of function. It's about reparation, it's about preparation, it's about healing and kind of getting over all together again.
Yeah, your Nike is your lifesaver. It's good.
Yes.
How about that? Yeah. Back to Marissa. ESKYIU has invited you to join the FlyKnit Collective. Yeah, a platform for creatives in all fields to generate dialogue in their own way and in their own communities. So what was the experience of working for a common goal with other like-minded creatives like...
Yeah, no, I can do a whole lecture on the 2012 FlyKnit Collective experience. It was completely inspiring, motivating, and eye-opening for not only myself, but also our design studio and also the participants. Nike came to us to invite Eric and myself to become the Greater China curators, and they gave us the shoe, the FlyKnit shoe, which I'm wearing, and I'm obsessed by, and I wear every day. And they said, here, take this shoe, I will give you 4 words: sustainability, form-fitting, performance, and lightness, and create workshops, create activities, empower 25 youth from all over China, from Shanghai, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Beijing, North China, come together and create something special and challenge the notion of sport. So what we were doing, we actually had no idea. We did a lot of research. We were challenged by the Nike team members, and also was able to create 4 major workshops in the festival sport, which had about 250,000 athletes participating for free, open to the public in Shanghai, to create an exhibition. And that was over our minds. We were able to curate collaborations where we brought artists, designers, to work alongside athletes, and athletes working alongside artists, and create something new. So for example, we also had innovated these very small LED accelerator lights to map the body of an athlete to play sport. Eric and our team also taught the 25 young designers and athletes to take photography and map their bodies in motion, and then challenge each other in an hour to take the best portrait that would get critiqued by design jury, and whoever had the most amazing photograph won that challenge. We also worked with Arthur Huang from Taiwan, who's been really obsessed with creating these unbelievable engineering post-waste plastic structures, and we created new objects to challenge the body and mind. And one thing I have to say, a very special moment, was having the opportunity to meet LeBron James. I had no idea who he was, and an architect, and to be able to see him inspire a room filled with NRC women dancing together, empowering the bodies, really impacts the way I think about community and collaboration. So I think the Flyknit Collective was a very incredible moment for our design career as young architects, and forever will be part of the way we think about how to disrupt, use technology, create new communities and inspiration, not only to very young designers, but also to involve ourselves and also challenge a lot of different participants in that process.
So do you think that sports can work as a catalyst to help create change in the society?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sports, it's like breathing. It should be part of our everyday life. It's also connected to our mind and bodies. And one thing that's, I think, very important is to have access to sport, just like what Vanessa and Angela were motivating, and having possibilities where communities come together, not in territories, but opening up territories to cross filter between generations, so knowledge gets transferred from, say, even learning about the R&D process of the Flyknit shoe can make us as creative designers think very differently. There's 56,000 recycled shoes to make this entire show. Like 56,000 pairs of shoes.
Wow.
So everything you see here is really from this notion of continuous sustainability and moving that forward to make transformation, and its starting point is from sports.
Wow. And to Christine, I know you do Pilates, right? Yes. Everyone can participate in sports, and also it can have the power to move the world forward. And you love Pilates. And how do you think Pilates has helped you de-stress yourself from work?
It's definitely played a big part.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a far less accomplished athlete than many of the speakers here today, but definitely sports has played a very big part in my life. I think growing up, I was very active. I was part of the swim team, track, netball, basketball, volleyball. And I think sports really instills a lot of discipline, perseverance. It teaches you the value of teamwork very early on. And I think through building physical strength, the process of that helps you, build a lot of inner strength as well. But now as an adult, I've had some injuries and some, wear and tear, having gotten a bit older. So Pilates and swimming are definitely my choice of sports. And it's really about well-being and having work-life integration and maintaining my health that's very important to me at this point. I also see sports as an enabler. You know, I'm quite active in the performing arts scene as well. I'm very passionate about performing in musicals and plays. And when I do that, I tend to have, you know, 3-month rehearsal periods and then, you know, perhaps a week of shows. And that's on top of my day job. So it's imperative that I don't get ill and I'm healthy and that I'm strong enough to see through that run. And sports for me is really the enabler in all of that. Yeah.
And can you share with us some of your personal experience of how sports can bring to people positive effects and positive energies?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you know, it's been mentioned here before as well, but I think through moving your body physically, I think it's really very valuable for your mental health as well. And for me, I work in the office, in an office environment, so most of the time I'm in meetings or at my desk, so I'm not very mobile during the day. So definitely being out and physically getting moving and meeting people and working with a team of people to build your strength has definitely got a positive impact on my day-to-day life, for sure.
Yeah, great. And May, you run. Yeah, and you are part of the run crew. It's called Pavement Pounders, right? So how does running help you deal with the stress of work?
So first of all, I joined running because I hate running.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's honest truth. And, and the reason I joined was actually when I was young, I was in the netball team. And then over time, and during that, I was never like the go attack. There was a wing attack position, was always supporting. So I was always like a supporter. I like being the fifth wheel. So I think that helped me a lot in the future. But then, as you know, life goes on and you become busy and education and then working. I work 12, 14 hours a day. So sports become in the back burner. So a few years ago, I think Nike approached me and was like, May, are you interested to run? And without any thought in my mind, I said, yes, I'll run. Sure, you want to join a marathon? Yeah, sure, easy. And so I think...
just do it, right?
Just do it. Yeah. And then that's one of the things I always believe now is like, I foolishly say yes to everything and then figure out if I can do it later. So my partner was kind of concerned, like, oh, you're joining a marathon? When is it? I was like, I don't know, but we're going to run. So let's start running. But I want to show how I've always had a sports mentality in my work. And I think that people in sports, if we have to explain it clearly, is that it's always about breakthrough and attitude. I think although I stopped doing sports, but whenever people give me a challenge, I think that there is a way to succeed. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but if you keep working, you'll exceed your own moment of that time. So like for example, I want to do an example of last year. Last year was, in my career, a low point. Although it seems really high, but there was a low point actually at Happy Paradise. Because I set a really high goal. I was like, it's gonna be artistic, it's gonna be about music, the food's gonna be progressive Chinese, and it's gonna be so cool, never seen before in Hong Kong. This was the goal I had for myself. We opened, it was busy, and then suddenly it went to nothing. And then so every day when I went to work, I started to be like, oh, you know, like, how do we continue and how do we know that we're doing something right, but how do we edit and how do we move forward? So a very good technique if you're a sports person, every day before I go to work, before I enter the door of my restaurant, I go like this. And then I walk into the restaurant and I go, what's up everyone? What are we doing today? And I have to give this really high energy. And although maybe at that moment you're very sad, but you keep that energy up and it affects the whole team. So I promise myself that before I enter in the restaurant, I always do a sequence. And I think that comes from sports and understanding that, you know, even before I run a marathon, I like listen to the right music, I get myself in the zone, I try to pretend that, you know, I'm suddenly eating really healthy, because it's not about the physical, it's not about what the challenge is, it's that you have to have the mental attitude to move forward. And so I think that's the core essence of sports.
Yeah, you're like the endorphin in the kitchen. Yeah,
endorphin,
in the kitchen. Yeah. And as an established female chef in this male-dominated industry, do you think that you have to work like really hard and even more harder to get recognition?
Well, one, I told you I'm a rebel, so one, I question the recognition. So for me, I wonder, like very simple, when you work in a kitchen table is 700 meter, perfect fit for a man to work cutting vegetables. So what if you're shorter? Do I bring a chair? Or does my back hurt because I'm a little bit shorter? So over time, do you have a disadvantage? I question all those little things that might affect someone's performance. And so I think about, is this knife too heavy for me? Do I have to use this knife? Do I have to perform in a way where in a kitchen it's very hierarchical? Like if you look at traditional kitchens, the male, not the male chef, the head chef is the leader. And everything he says is the ultimate truth, and you follow. And so if you were in the army or in a kitchen, you follow that final destiny, and that destiny is defined by the leader. For me, when I started that's why I never succeeded at anyone else's kitchen except for my own, was when I opened, because I was like, I don't get it. You know, I was like, why are these people so angry? Why do we have to? Yeah. And so then I questioned, like, okay, can we do it differently? So our kitchen is more flat-lined. So it doesn't mean that if you become a chef in 10 years, you start creating. I want them to start creating in year 1, year 2. I don't want them to be like technically very good, and then by year 10, they have to start being creative, and they don't know how to. And that's some of the hardships. So in terms of recognition, I think, you know, I also challenge things like Michelin and Asia's 50 Best, World's 50 Best, and I'm so happy right now that they like what I say, so they invite me to a lot of the panels and platforms to do the changes in the back end. So I'm editing, like, for example, what are the rules and structure to succeed? Is this recognition fair to all players? And so that's what I'm interested in now. And so I'm lucky that, you know, with right now the highlight is on women. So I practice very actively in terms of how to, while you're giving me the mic, to speak as loud as I can.
Wow, you make changes and you like create your own playground. That's really amazing. Yeah. So now the question is to Marissa, Ingrid, and also to Christine. How do you see the impact of the female collective bringing to the society, as there are more and more successful women like you and all the speakers here today from different views and also different industries? Yeah, yeah, Christine, yeah.
I mean, the female collective is incredibly powerful. I think that within the part that I'm really excited to see is really the shift to get more women on boards and women in decision-making roles. There's extensive research that demonstrates that gender diversity at the board level is going to have a significant impact on your business results and whatnot. So that's something that I'm encouraged to see. We've got a long way to go here in Hong Kong, but it's clear that the female collective is definitely driving that forward, and a lot of corporates are responding to that, which is good. And within our organization at SWI, we do have a women's network that was set up. I work with an awesome steering committee. A couple of them are here in this room today, and they're a group of ambitious, driven, incredibly smart women who are really set on bringing about systemic change within the organization. So as a network, what we try to do focus on a number of things. So first off, we host events such as these to bring in internal and external speakers to really raise awareness about gender diversity and inclusion and to get debates and discussions going on. Secondly, we look at development initiatives for our high potential, high performing women leaders. So we have mentoring programs in place. I think we have about 80 to 100 mentees who are mentored by CEOs and directors from across the organization. So it's a great opportunity for them, but it's also some good reverse mentoring as well. So some of our senior executives to really understand what the aspirations are of our women leaders and perhaps some of the challenges they experience in navigating through the organization to achieve their goals. We also host a bunch of workshops, skills-based workshops, to really empower them with the skills that they have put forward as needs. We're also trying to drive a lot of policy change within the organization as well. So identifying, you know, what are some of the pain points that our women leaders are experiencing? What are the drop-off points around retention and whatnot? And lastly, it's really about partnerships. So how do we get internal advocates on board and vocal and really 100% behind the movement that we're trying to create, and also partnering with other corporates as well as NGOs for our members to start giving back to the community as well. And again, that's all down to a group of awesome women within our organization who, within our circle of influence, are trying to really impact change around this space.
Wow. And Ingrid?
Let me put this in this way. In the past time, I think women I get so worried about being pretty. But now, in the sports field, I found more and more women, they are pretty smart, pretty strong, and pretty kind. And even more, they are extremely strong and kind. And I see them as like, they are not just successful. They are not just focusing on being strong, independent individually, but also focusing on sustain and helping others. Let me take this for instance. Recently, we're just doing a cover story about the 2018 Fast 42 project in Taiwan. These group of people, they are trying to chase their personal best in marathon, but they are not just only chasing the world, not just chasing to be faster. One girl, she's a nurse, she told me, she trained so hard to be faster, to be stronger, because she wants to be in the emergency room as soon as possible to help the people who get injured badly. So I think that's the spirit. And so I think it will affect and inspire our next generation. Yeah.
Yeah. Marisa? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, I mean, it's a huge topic, and having to practice in Hong Kong, also formally and teaching in some of the universities here in architecture and design, and very involved in running a foundation that I lead called Design Trust. And also we think about this all the time, about creating and curating diversity. So for example, very similar to some of those initiatives you've mentioned, there's an initiative I've also launched called Future Studio Programs, where we're building actively micro-parks in Hong Kong to transform small pocket parks, to give them back to the community. But the designers are actually both men, women, old and young. And so we are very invested in not just the question of women and empowerment and gender equality, but diversity of mindset and empowerment of knowledge. So we have extremely amazing 8-year-olds who have retired, feeding back into these systems, women who have formerly ran businesses involved, to very young graduates from school, also interning and participating in these discussions. And so it's also from our responsibility as individuals to really change the collective community by curating opportunities. And I think it's not only just women, it's also the men have to be involved. And we've been very lucky in our own design studio to always create diversity. We're very much focused on making sure it's not only male architects or male designers coming in to work with us, but also my partner Eric, who also leads the Department of Architecture, making sure there's women professors involved and academics. I think this is a really important thing, and I've actually sat on boards myself where I was invited. Actually, I got a letter one day from who said, Marissa, we'd like to invite you. We have a policy of 30% women on this board. And I was thinking, are you inviting me because of my gender or my intellect and my power? I'm still questioning that, but I'm really hoping to see that change to at least 50, 60% in Hong Kong, because this is a real mindset change that has to happen, but very much excited to be on this panel where it's 100% women.
Yeah, and speaking of gender equality issues, this question is to Xiaowei. Women nowadays are sources of power. Like, we have the power to change, power to prevent risks, and also power to make changes, et cetera, et cetera. Which power do you think women in mainland China should use to to invoke into this gender equality issues in the world?
Wow, this is a very big question. Well, let's just say, well, first of all, I think in terms just, and then that's all speaking in a broader terms, right? So I think a lot of people knows like among the kind of Chinese or Greater China or Asian culture, actually mainland China is the most gender equal place. Well, simply because I think in the traditional Confucius culture, like women being designated to a role of a domestic and men to designate a role of a public. So that's why in the area or region which is still be heavily influenced by Confucius culture, and plus the patriarchal culture, like women, it's very hard, still need to strive to go to the top. But I think in mainland China, because the whole history of breaking away from the tradition, so women has relatively much more equal positions, but still not as equal as we want. So I think because in working mainland, I met so many great women, and actually many great women are running business and then companies, and they have much more, and especially recently, I always say like my new role models is a bunch of young girls because they're leading the new tech trends. I remember like a few weeks ago, I hosted this panel at the BOF China, and which is the most popular one because it's two female fashion tech leaders, and they're all in their 20s. And they're talking about, and I remember like a question we discussed is because I read this wonderful cover stories in New Yorkers a while ago. It's they're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, about the whole Facebook pop cultures and how it's damaged our democracy nowadays. And then there's one paragraph that struck my attention. It's like, well, we never thought, I mean, nowadays, like, okay, actually we're living in a world not so much divided by nations and actually be kind of dominated by few huge corporations, especially in terms of digital culture. Our lives kind of be dictated by Facebook, Instagram, Twitters, or WeChat, well, Tencent or whatever. And then, well, Chinese company aside, all these American companies, they are actually all being founded by a bunch of white dudes in their 20s. In the Silicon Valley or fell from like Ivy League school. So there's a very, very unified and then very like monopoly kind of culture. And then those culture later on necessarily will reflect the world they're building. So I'm like, oh my God, this is so scary. So there's a need to really encourage more young women go into this tech world. And then, so I guess it's not only just tech world, but just because I think the digital culture of the tech world is really leading, in a way, what we're doing right now. So I think, and that's, so I think that's kind of what I would encourage more young women to do, especially in mainland China. And the other thing is, like, if we want to link with sports, it's like, it's being like active because, but it's a bit harder because I think active is not only in terms of physical, but also in terms of your mind. And then, but not only it's yourself, like there's a necessary linkage, and we need to try to build a much better roadmap how to become active, like from being active to be like being an activist. And then I think being an activist is kind of like, well, unfortunately, like sustainability become another trendy word recently, but it is always good and bad about being a trendy word. Like the bad is like, it's not just a trend. The good one is that means people are much more aware about that. We need to be conscious about our environment. We need to be much more active to have our voice and to do something to change our society. So I think I don't know what exactly is the roadmap yet, but I think in a lot of places, in a lot of other communities, and then they're all doing this kind of practice. But I would like to find a way to delineate this kind of clear like route, like from being active to being an activist.
Yeah, and yeah. Speaking of gender equality, we can bring it to the next level. This question is to May. You're active in LGBTQ plus rights movement in Asia, and LGBTQ plus rights are getting more and more important and also more recognized in certain regions, but there are also tighter controls in other places. So what more do you think we can do to create a better environment for the group?
For me personally, I think when I moved back to Hong Kong, I came from the US, so moving back to Hong Kong was a little bit frightening because the rights and the movement was a little bit different. So the first thing I did when, I don't know why they asked me, but I remember for Elle magazine, they asked us to, whether they could celebrate my relationship with Sam about 5-6 years ago on this magazine as like a couple for Valentine's Day. And I, of course, said yes. And I was like, sure. Because I had this decision that if I was coming back to Hong Kong, no one would put me in the closet, and I would just come out publicly, very vocally, so that if my mother tried to lie to her friend, there was a reference in a magazine that she couldn't hide.
It's on the paper.
So, so that's what I did very early on. So I actually, since then, have always acted very publicly in terms of what I was doing, and as well as, you know, being very vocal. Whether they wanted to know whether I was gay or not, I would just share it at podiums where they're like, why do we even need to know? but I think that's necessary, because what it does is like it puts them into the mindset of people, you know? And if you haven't noticed, I'm gay here as well. So I think that in a very small sense is everyone has the role to act publicly. It's okay to talk about your relationship in public. It's okay to, you know, share your concerns at work. And I think that act in itself is what I think my greatest doing at the moment is just to live publicly. In terms of a legal aspect of rights, of course, I'm very thankful for, in Hong Kong, there's actually a lot of LGBT community groups. So especially in the legal field, there's a lot of precedents set now that people are fighting in court to provide more rights to LGBT members. And I think when we talk about diversity, it's talking about women empowerment is not excluding others. It just creates a platform to understand diversity through different channels. So whether we're talking about women, or whether we're talking about LGBTQ community, or whether we're talking about Asians or minorities, it's just to share, to understand diversity. So I think my point is as everyone here, you don't need to be gay to care about LGBTQ or women's rights. You just need to be concerned about your friends and your family, and then share it forward.
Yeah, right. Everybody should have the right to be themselves and to share love, to share what they enjoy, right? So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. So it has been a wonderful time for us to hear from wonderful women and to learn from them, and that this discussion panel, I really got inspired. Thank you so much. And it offers us a very real and unique journey to push sustainability design and also women's empowerment forward. Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you, Marisa, Christine, Xiaowei, May, Ingrid, and also our former panel talk guests. Thank you, Angela, Vanessa, Stephanie, Wian, and also Hillary. So let's take a picture together, okay? Let's take the picture with our second panel first.